Okay, so let me talk you through the things that you need to do to be successful in your Module 2 assessment. Um, First of all, and I'm sure you know all this already, but let's just run through it. The assessment comes in three parts, and the total word length that you're allowed for all three parts is 4,000 words. Now, we've got some suggested word lengths for different parts, which I'll go through in a moment, but it's entirely up to you how you do that. The only thing you have to hit is 4,000 words in total, okay? So let me talk you through the three different parts and the learning outcomes you need to demonstrate in each one. So the first thing that you need to write is a student support case study. And the outcome there is to demonstrate a critically reflective understanding of student support, showing awareness of relevant legal frameworks and requirements in post-compulsory education. So to unpack that, what you're asked to write about here is a situation where you've either given an individual student or a particular small group of students some specific extra support for whatever reason. And I'd expect to see you explain how you identified that the support was needed, so what happened that made you realise that you needed some support, what you decided to do for this student or these small number of students and why, and having acted, what happened, evaluate how successful it was, did it go well, did it not go well, and why was that? So that would give you the critically reflective understanding because you'd show that you were able to recognise the need for support, deliver appropriate support, and evaluate how effective that support had been or not. Right? And as I say, you do this by writing a short, anonymised case study. So obviously, we don't need to be able to identify which student or students you're talking about. That shows how you did this, and probably about 750 words. As I say, you can either go for an individual student or a small group of students, and you can write about support that you've given somebody in class or outside of class. So it could be something you've done in a tutorial, it could be something you've done in a class, it could be that you've given somebody some extra resources and extra help towards their learning. Whatever. There's a very wide range of different things that you can do here. However, one thing you do need to show that you're aware of is the relevant legal frameworks, because quite often, if we're giving a student support, it's not just because we're being nice to that particular person, obviously it's a good thing, but because actually there are legal requirements on us to support students in various ways, and so we need to show that we're aware of that. Now, the nicest and most convenient list I've found recently of this is the list of sources included in the new UK Quality Code for Higher Education, and that's a really useful thing because that's basically saying to us, look, in higher education, this is what you're legally obliged to do. It's just been revised. It came out in March 2013, so this is bang up to date, and you'll find this on the QAA website, by the way, qaa.ac.uk. You can look at the whole quality code there. But this is chapter B4, which is the chapter on enabling student development and achievement. And just over the page, you'll find here quite a long, you might want to press pause in a second, quite a long little extract from the code telling us, in broad terms what our requirements are. So pause and have a read of that. And then there's also a long list of resources. So, and they've grouped them in quite a helpful way. So the first 7 resources on this page are overall guides to the 2010 Equality Act. So you can have a look at that. Some of them are specific to Northern Ireland and Wales, but obviously we want the stuff for England and just a sense of what's what. And then they start giving us resources which are helpful for different groups of students. So the bottom 2 on this page are about working with students with different forms of disability. And there's really good resources there. Again, just pause this when you see something that you think you want and take note of the reference. And all of this is available online, so you can access all of it, which is the good thing, obviously. And then over the page, we've got the top 2 again are about inclusive learning and teaching, and then the second one about using technology specifically for that. And then we get 3 resources which are mainly about ethnicity. Then a couple which are about gender. The bottom one of the page is about supporting LGB students. Then over the page, trans students and staff. A couple on religious observance. And then 2 on international students. And finally 1 on mature students. There's a really nice range of different resources there. Now, it's entirely conceivable that the case study you're going to write about, there aren't any legal frameworks which are relevant to it. I mean, it might be that you gave somebody some particular help because they were really lacking in confidence as a performer. That would be dealing with an individual student's need, and it wouldn't come within any of these legal frameworks probably. So only bring them in if they're relevant. But if they are relevant, I don't know, you're dealing with a student with particular special educational needs, for example, then yes, the legal framework would be relevant to that case. So make sure that you refer to it and show that you know, basically show that you know the context, show that you know what's out there. Okay, so that's the first of the assignments. The second is the one on quality enhancement. So quality enhancement merely means, getting information about our teaching and then seeking to improve it. And the outcome there is to demonstrate a purposeful engagement with quality enhancement designed to help improve the student learning experience. So we engage with it very actively, and the reason we're doing it is we're trying to make something better for our students in class. The assessment then is a short critical account of your engagement with some kind of quality enhancement process. So it could be the end of course BIM course evaluations, where we get information from students. And obviously we can also look at student achievement. Have they done well? Have they not done well? That's useful information. It could be informal feedback from students. It could be feedback from teaching observations. It could be feedback from focus groups. I mean, there's lots of different sources, but basically a kind of a formal process within BIM, or informal, actually, it could be informal student feedback, that would be fine, but it's kind of where you've got information that doesn't just rely on your own intuition, okay? So where you've had some information or some input, some feedback, and you realise on the basis of that something could be improved. So you say what the feedback was, how you thought about it, and then the second part of the assessment, discuss what changes you plan to make and what impact those changes are intended to have on the student learning experience. Why have you thought about doing this, and why do you think it'll make things better? This assignment can be entirely future focused, as it's expressed on the page here, or if you want, you could write about, because you're on a 2-year version of the course, not a 1-year version of the course, you could write about something you have actually done that you did last year, and then you could write about, okay, these are the changes I made, and here's my evaluation of how well they're working so far. So you can either do a future-focused one, or you can do one where you have been through the cycle once, and you can evaluate how well things are working out. One of the challenges with all these assignments is that the word counts are really, really low. Middlesex is actually very mean on its word counts, and just as a reminder, the 4,000 words is an absolute top limit. I know that with some of our other partners at BIM, you're allowed 10% over, but no, 4,000 words is the top limit. Quotations do not count towards your word limit, nor does anything in the bibliography count towards your word limit. So that's absolutely fine. Nor is anything put in an appendix, but I really don't particularly like appendices coming in. I mean, if it's worth mentioning, it's worth mentioning in the main body of the text. If there's any supporting evidence you want to give in an appendix, that's fine, but you should discuss that before you hand it in, because by and large we like to avoid appendices. Okay, and then we come to the big meaty, about 2,500 words, the main piece, which is the essay that you write. So you've done your student support case study, you've done your quality enhancement case study, and now you're on to your main assignment. Now the assignment covers 3 learning outcomes, and they are as follows. The first is to critically evaluate a range of pedagogic models and their application in the classroom. So pedagogic models, any models to do with teaching and learning whatsoever. We take a very Catholic view on this. Things that we've covered in the course, or things that we haven't covered in the course and you've come across in your own researches, absolutely fine. The second one, to critically evaluate a range of models and practices of feedback and assessment. So the first one, teaching and learning, the second one, feedback and assessment, and the third one, really creating a positive and effective learning environment, or creating an effective group or community of practice. So you've got teaching and learning, feedback and assessment, and community of practice. Now it's entirely up to you, but I view those 3 things as actually kind of the holistic whole of teaching and learning, really, or of professional practice. So you can treat them separately, but I'm perfectly happy to see those treated, interwoven together, because I think the boundaries between them are somewhat flexible anyway. So in the essay, what you're asked to do is basically make an explicit claim that you have indeed achieved all of those learning outcomes, which were on the previous slide, obviously. So you basically need to demonstrate to us that, yes, you are able to do all 3 of those things. And you do it through writing a critical evaluation of a range of theories and models that we've looked at on the PGCert in specific relationship to your own practice. and the essay must take account of all 3 specified learning outcomes. Doesn't necessarily have to weight all 3 equally. All 3 need to be present, but if you're particularly interested in focusing a bit more on one than the others, that's fine, absolutely fine, because we want you to be able to use this assignment as a way of doing some really genuinely useful in-depth reflection on your own practice, which itself should generate important and powerful learning. But all 3 must be present in some way. Now, I have a suggested writing strategy for you. There's no sense of compulsion whatsoever that you should feel like you have to follow this strategy. Okay, it's just one way of writing. I think successful professional reflection essays, which will tick all of the boxes. If you follow this pattern successfully, you will write great master's level essays, because it's really arranged around giving you a series of questions to engage with, and if you engage with the questions, then inevitably you're going to be writing in a thoughtful and critical way, and you're going to be giving explanation, and you're going to be giving evidence. If you feel confident with this basic version, then you can riff creatively off it. This version starts with practice, because I always think it's easier to write these essays starting with your own practice. You can turn it on its head and start with theory, and if you want to write it that way, then you'll need to think about adapting this pattern. So the one assumption I'm making here is that what you're going to do is you're going to identify interesting areas of your practice to focus on, rather than in a more abstract way identify different areas of theory to focus on. But remember, the overall title of this module is Linking Theory and Practice. So essentially what we're needing to see in this essay is a dialogue between the theories you've looked at on the PGCert and your own practice. We're wanting to see 2 things. We're wanting to see that what you've learnt on the PGCert, the new theories, models and ideas, have informed your practice, and then we're wanting to see that you can then start from your practice and go, okay, from my improved practice, what do I now think about the theories that I used? So we're going from theory to practice. Here's a new theory, I've learnt something new, it's improved my practice. And then back from practice to theory again. Here's my practice, here's what happened in the classroom. Does it line up with some of the things that theory says? And hence, by going in both directions, you are going to be critically evaluating the theories with which you've been dealing. There are 5 elements that you need to have in your essay, and they're in the title of this slide. So obviously we've already said you need to show awareness of theory, and you need to show a high level of objectively critical self-awareness of your practice. We need to see reflection in the assignment. Reflection would be thinking about what you've just done and seeking to improve it. And underpinning all of this, we need to see some evidence from your classroom. How do you know these things? You're making claims. You might say, oh, I tried peer feedback in class and it really improved what was going on. That's great, but we need some evidence. How do you know it really improved what was going on? And some analysis of that evidence. And that will underpin you being able to link your theory and practice with the kind of a tone of reflection, which is about trying to improve things. So I would say that a good way of tackling this essay would be to write 1 or 2 case studies, interesting things that happened in class. Remember, you've only got 2,500 words. Or just take one particular class that you're teaching and look at different aspects of teaching that class, and that you want to go through the following steps. So the first thing is you might want to identify an area you wanted to improve, because that would show the reflective aspect at the top of this slide, because reflection is all about looking at things and wanting to improve them. Reflection has to lead to action. And it would be useful to have a little brief bit of context there. What told you this area needed improvement? How did you know? And a little bit of evidence there. Then the second thing would be to write about what options for action did you consider? Because this allows you to link your experience and theories you've looked at. Because hopefully, having studied the PGCert, this should have drawn your attention to a wider range of options than you might otherwise have had. So you're in a particular teaching situation, you want to improve something, you can now generate a whole range of different options, drawing on both your experience, the discussions you've had with your peers, and your greater knowledge of theory. Then obviously you'd want to tell us which option you picked, and again, why, what informed your decision, and again, you can be drawing on both experience and theory there to explain why you made the decision that you made. Then you would actually try it out, and we want to know what happened when you tried it out. And again, there needs to be some evidence there underpinning your claims. If you say this worked well, this didn't work so well, what's your evidence for making those claims? And then you need some discussion of that evidence to support your claim. Then we get into the really meaty part, which I think is interesting. This is where you really do link theory and practice. Okay, so why do you think things worked out the way they did? If you say that you used peer feedback in class and it improved one thing but didn't really help with something else, why do you think that happened? And again, it's obviously, this is another key opportunity to relate theory and practice and bring them to bear upon each other. You can think of theory as a lens, really, through which you can look, and you can look at aspects of your practice and go, oh, well, I think the reason that might not have worked is, and then you can relate it to ideas from the course. And again, but we're still wanting you to relate your conclusions to both experience and theory, so that you're bridging and linking the two. And then in the final section, in the light of this whole experience, how would you now evaluate how well you used your chosen theory to inform your actions? Did you really account for all the different things that the theory asks you to account for, or did you not? So how well did you use it? But also, how would you now evaluate the theory itself, having tried to put it into practice and seeing what happened in your own practical situation? How adequate to your situation was that theory? And I think if you go through that whole cycle of 6 stages, you really will be doing a very good quality critical evaluation of these various theories of teaching and learning, of feedback and assessment, of group dynamics in relationship to your own practice, because at each stage of this, you're bringing practice and theory into productive dialogue with each other. And you can think of it like this. You can think of, you've got various theories and you use them as a lens, and when you look through that lens, they help you examine your practice and plan to improve it. And very often people are much stronger in their assignments writing that journey, writing in that particular direction. But I want to draw attention to the fact that if you just write in that direction, really what you're doing is you're privileging theory over practice, and I don't think that's a sensible thing to do. I think theory and practice need to be in a mutually aligned dialogue. So the other journey is to start with your practice and see that as a lens through which you examine the worth of the theory and you evaluate what you think about the quality of that theory. And really you want both journeys. You want to be able to move in both directions and create a sense of dialogue. Whether you follow the assignment plan I've suggested or not, this is the slide that you really do need to pay attention to in your assignments, because we want to see dialogue that goes in both directions. I highly recommend that you show a draft to one of your tutors. I'm very happy to see it, or I think Joelle, I don't know whether Joelle's going to be able to see them because of her timings at the moment. So you might want to check that with Joelle, and if it's not convenient for her, that's absolutely fine. Send them over to me and I'll be very, very happy to look at them. As long as I get them by the 28th of December, that would be the very latest. I mean, before Christmas would be better, wouldn't it, really? Because it gives you a bit more time to sort them out. But at the very latest, the 28th of December, I will give you feedback on them. For what it's worth, I've never had anybody who I've given feedback on a draft have to resit it, but I have seen people having to resit their assignments if they didn't show a draft to a tutor. So you might want to think carefully about that one. And that's it. Good luck. I hope this was of some help. It's quite a lot to think about. So probably play it through a couple of times, pause, digest, see what you think, and then if you've got any questions, do feel free to come back to me on it. Okay, good luck with it all.